Hi, my name is Seulkee Kang, and I'm a PhD student at Arizona State University. And today I would like to talk about the reception and connections between history of technology and the discipline of art history. This is a short version of my paper, so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me later. In the digital age we live in, new forms of media and new channels of emotional communication have evolved. The adoption of digital devices in our daily lives with ever increasing intensity necessitates artists to deliver their messages to the viewing public instantly and intuitively. Reflecting this context, adapting the state of art technologies was no exception for art historians. For this very reason, the understanding of history of technology which impacted on the art historical discipline has become much more important given that its innovative, original investigation of technology bequeathed art historians means of communication that gave rise to the new modes in exploring artworks or artistic movement and contributed to shaping their modern sensitivity in teaching art. This paper therefore examines engagement of technology with the discourse of art history and the questions imposed on visual culture. By investigating criticisms on art history in relation to accommodation of technological development, the study traces the way in which art historians have been influenced by new technologies as they develop their methodologies and how technological advancements influence the way people create knowledge. History of technology is a complex network consisting of its own historical or social context, and one way of understanding our history is investigating the reception and connections between interdisciplinary disciplines. So, for example, from the 20th century to until now, scholars, artists, and art historians from various disciplines try to produce interdisciplinary results. So from EAT group to nowadays, students, scholars are doing their research for interdisciplinary results and they're focusing on integration of disciplines. So today, information and digital communication technologies are reshaping the art and media industry worldwide. New interactive communication technology, which enables synchronous communication with other audiences and content providers, is taking off even though it is not a serious threat yet to all systems of knowledge. However, the study would like to emphasize that technology is also driven by the discipline of art history, which creates reproductions of digital media and exists inseparable to development of technologies. I would like to first explore open access, one of connections between history of technology and the discipline of art history. Art history has evolved over many years and ushered in changes of historical and social context. To reflect these changes, diverse perspectives of technology have produced massive amounts of information and fostered understanding the art history discipline. As such, the digital era has allowed cultural heritage or cultural assets to be digitalized and provided us with open access to digital heritage, which realizes scientific and engineering studies to research on artworks. Moreover, advanced in computational methods for analyzing artworks, especially paintings, made objective ways of understanding art history possible. Given the datasets and technology, scholars from science and engineering fields have analyzed elements of paintings consisting of color, tone, texture, space, form, shape, and line using computational methods for image analysis. In terms of archives and classification, investigating various dynamics between reception and applications of technology is very interesting. According to Sakla, the birth of photography generated, quote, honorific and repressive, quote, functions, which provided emotional ties to families and migrants in a pleasant way, whereas it stimulated a new, quote, juridical photographic realism, quote, and regulation of the interesting number of subproletariat in urban life. Despite an unquestionable presence of salutary effects of photography, it rather completes the photographer Marcus Aurelius' root circle of utilitarianism where easily accessible aesthetic pleasures lead to a disciplinary and, quote, utilitarian social machine. The paradoxical function of photography generates both pleasure and discipline, creating a complex power relation within the history of technology and the art historical discipline. Although photography threatened cultural institutions and its existing order in the 19th century, it started to present a quote, near legalistic truth, quote, where univocal, multiple, and duplicable traits functions as the foundation of the legality as a visual document and an indexical inventory. Because photography was an instrument to document with state-of-the-art technologies, it universally guaranteed accuracy and uniformity, establishing a new realm of technology to present information and even the evidential effect. With the emergence of enlightenment and rationalization in the 19th century, photography sustained its legitimacy by devising an archival mode. Photographic archive was a new visual approach to incorporate diverse disciplines, but a universal archive was necessary, and for this purpose, image recognition technology proliferated the unified system of visual recognition and classification. With the aid of data mining technologies, the photographic archive gained accuracy with evidential promise. After accepting new modes of classification and interpretation, several IT companies contrived the imperative function in photographic archive as an encyclopedic repository of images of everything. This process of achieving classification generated rationalization and authority of the data, and this archival plane is linked to power relations where power regulates and even inhibits pleasures of the users. Moreover, the classified data archive secures standardization and classification by statistical means to create different subcategories in the institution of archive. With the effort to simplify and classify the massive amount of information, more effective classifying mechanism is necessary universally in the society. Strictly speaking, those who directly regulate standards and categorization of the data would experience difficulties conceptualizing, defining, and analyzing images. This is because computers and human perception generate different results of classification even with the advent of holding a massive amount of information systemized for visual representation and image recognition. However, engineers sometimes implement power and authority to build the data structure to the archival mode and ironically assess artworks without objectivity. Reflecting this context, when recognizing certain elements or analyzing artworks, this deterministic attitude towards classification assures vertical arrangement in the process of image recognition. Therefore, various entities, especially art history, should reflect upon interchangeability and take an imperative role in this digital era. Thus, I believe that art history should become more involved in the new technologies that are used to analyze, categorize, and archive images and their information. Likewise, technology as medium in disseminating knowledge and conducting research, which include from photography, lantern slides, and 35mm codec slides to multi-display, present the use of technological advancements which developed compare and contrast methodologies and archives to study art, and this has been utilized until now in art history lectures, and the impact of slides were widespread in commercial and entertainment too. In this era, there have been analytic techniques enabled by computational technology. Joanna Drucker, a professor at UCLA, presents an analysis of visual epistemology in the digital humanities and describes a series of standard problems and visualizations for the humanities. Questions arising from the discipline of digital humanities include digital humanities methods, empirical work, critical theorization, and research focusing on key issues in digital transformation as it affects cultural forms of practices, societies, archival issues, and knowledge production and dissemination. Mutually influencing two disciplines, digital humanities reveal features of art historical artifacts in novel ways such as rethinking identity, purpose, use and substance of objects through digitalization of resources, computer imaging techniques, and statistical and large-scale analysis. and this ultimately fosters critical understandings of artwork, which investigates what and how they are presented. So, for example, Carnegie Museum of Art in the US opened their standardized data to produce provenance studies, and they also mapped out the transaction route of artworks, for example, here in Marcus's work. Another strand of interdisciplinary influence includes media technologically driven methodologies to view technology as an epistemic center, which becomes objects of study. New technologies have influenced the way that scholars have been influenced by technologies as they develop their methodologies and as they make choices about the questions they impose on their visual materials. As such, media archaeology, which stems from various disciplines and backgrounds, envisions and amplifies a new sphere of knowledge and thinking. Being responsible and responsive to the digital transformation and technological developments we encounter every day, apart from traditional existing methodologies to explore the sphere of art and culture, we need to see where we're headed to and what is beyond our discourses. According to What is Media Archaeology by Giuseppe Pereca, he mentions that, quote, archaeology is always implicitly or explicitly about the present, asking what is our present moment in its object, discourses and practices, and how did it come to be perceived as reality, quote. He also contends that, quote, archive is one key institutional site or memory with an intertwined history with modernity and the birth of the state apparatus, but which now is increasingly being rearticulated less as a place of history, memory, and power, and more as a dynamic and temporal network, a software environment, and a social platform for memory, but also for remixing, quote. A striking difference from this approach is that it focuses on, quote, a media technologically informed understanding of the networks, in which memory become partly an issue of technical media, quote, rather than, quote, returning to such accounts that argue memory as human capacity for remembering, retrieval, or trauma, quote. Exploring different modes of senses, media archaeology strives to seek history of present and alternative histories which embraces non-mainstream technological and mediatic apparatuses. Rather than following the linearity of historical narratives, it re-articulates heterogeneity in history and focuses on exteriority of accident. Investigating the reception of history of technology can be a helpful way to not only examine the discipline of our history from diverse perspectives, but also establish a system for a better future. One of the goals of this research is to establish an engagement in interdisciplinary studies, but fully embracing various perspectives and participating in in-depth discussion in diverse fields may have limitations. In this vein, consilience can lead people from one thought to the next, providing them with a big framework to work collectively and find relevant connections which go through various disciplines. Mankind, which is in company with the nature, have uncountable infinity of possibility in creating, reasoning, and sharing their philosophy with another. I believe that this uncountable infinity gives not only academic advancement, but the harmony where we can endeavor and promote knowledge synthesis. Also, collaboration will be furthered primarily because we can share information in various media almost instantaneously with anyone, anywhere. Thank you for listening my presentation.